great FP&A departments haven't changed all that much. The really good companies always realized FP&A was strategic and, they needed to be operational and commercial focused. The industry is catching up and businesses are catching up to, it's a real benefit to have these people treated as partners. Some of it is becoming much more recognized, but I think great FP&A has always been that. So I'm not sure FP&A that way has changed a lot in what is great FP&A. I think how companies see it has changed a lot, and what's needed and the demands have increased, which is data's increased, which is where that technology comes. I still think, most FP&A departments, and, I definitely struggle with a lot myself, still struggle with data, right? At the end of the day, data rarely is a data problem, almost always a process, leadership, people problem.
Before we start today's episode, I want to address a common challenge I have observed with FP&A professionals. While Excel skills are abundant, many are not fully tapping into Power BI's capabilities to enhance their financial analysis skills. With over a decade of experience in FP&A consulting and countless training sessions conducted, my most loved training by FP&A professionals, hands down, has been my Introduction to Power BI for Financial Analysts. So, for my loyal podcast listeners, I am giving you free access to it today. Check out the link in the description below to upgrade your FP&A skills today. Thank you. Hello everybody, welcome to FP&A Unboxed. Today we have a guest who needs absolutely no introduction. If you've been on LinkedIn and do anything in the FP&A space, we have Paul Barnhurst here with us, the FP&A guy, the legend, the man, Paul Barnhurst.
Thank you so much, Tejas. I'm thrilled to be here. It's funny, when you did your introduction, you said FP&A Unboxed. I'm like, wait, it should be FP&A tomorrow. Like, that's immediately what went out in my head. Because, right, I'm so used to doing introductions, but I'm thrilled to be on your podcast. And it's awesome to see more and more people like what you're doing, creating podcasts in the FP&A space, because you get different views and different opinions, and it just helps us all learn. So thrilled to be on the show.
Thank you so much, Paul, for making the time. I know you run 3 podcasts and you do a bunch of training and a bunch of other stuff. So, speaking engagements and a whole lot of other things. So absolutely, really appreciate you making the time to come on the show today. So thank you so much. Looking to pick your brain on a whole lot of FP&A topics. You've got a bunch of experience and definitely have spoken to more people than I have. So would love to pick your brains on that one. But before you go into the conversations you've had or the experience you've had, talk a little bit more about your career. You've worked in government departments, government procurement teams. That is a bit interesting one. So love to learn a little bit more about that. But that's been a while. Then obviously you've done a bit in corporate with American Express and things like that. So from corporate to then founding the FP&A guy and building a brand of your own. Okay, how scary? How many sleepless nights? Worked exactly as per plan.
Yeah, nothing goes exactly as planned. So I'll give take a couple minutes here and just a little bit of the journey. So I started in procurement. That basically boiled down to someone finally offered me a job after it took, months to find one out of school. I got to go move into the middle of nowhere outside Death Valley in California, and you're going to pay me? Sign me up. That's really how it started. It was a great experience. I spent a little over 4 years there and had great bosses, but pretty quickly realized all the rules and regulations of government procurement was not the right career for me. And so I went back to grad school. And originally when I went back to grad school, I was planning on studying a Master of Science in Information Management and doing procurement, because that was my background. I went to ASU, which had one of the best supply chain programs in the country. Took my first finance class, loved it. Took one of the advanced finance classes, ended up switching to finance with the Master of Science in Information Management. I always enjoyed numbers. And then, I started working. Again, I had bad times. I graduated in 2001. So think September 11th, job market's not in a great place. Yeah. I graduated in 2008. Bear Stearns, Lehman, and all just collapsed. And I kind of wanted to do something in investment banking with no experience. Yeah. Good luck. So it took a while to find a job. I ended up working for American Express. I did report writing, and I supported a cash forecast and, the FP&A team with some things, and did that for about 1.5 years, 2 years. And an opportunity to get promoted came up. I'm like, FP&A, okay, whatever that is, you're going to pay me more, I'll take that job. I got it. And, spent 10 years in FP&A, about 12 years. American Express, a couple other companies. And then what happened really where the business started is 2016. I'm looking for a job. I'm supporting Traveler's Check, not a growing business. I knew it was time to probably find something else to do. And so I talked to a guy by the name of Ken Fick. He was an FP&A consultant. And I'm like, hey, if you give me 30 minutes of your time, I'll give you a Starbucks gift card. And he responded with, I'm happy to give you some of my time, but I want your Starbucks gift card. Will you write an article for my website? I remember thinking, I suck at writing, but okay, sure. I'll write an article. That led to, he offered me like $100 to write a couple more. I wrote a few more, started sharing it on LinkedIn. Next thing I know, I'm helping facilitate one of the biggest groups on LinkedIn. They started inviting me to a couple of their webinars and started to build a following. And that just continued to grow. Then where the FP&A tools came is I tried to work for a couple tools. So I wrote about them on LinkedIn because I had a couple thousand people following, still all trying to find a job. And the people didn't hire me. They selected the other person in both situations. But all of a sudden, all these companies reached out to me and said, hey, will you look at our FP&A tool? At the time, I had an Excel website. I'm like, okay, I could write about Excel with a million other people who are all better than me. Or I could be one of the only people writing about FP&A software. Little did I know that everybody and their dog decided to create an FP&A software. Right? The last few years, we've had a ton of them grow. So I came in right at the perfect time, and everybody just started reaching out to me, and a bunch of things came together. Late 2021, someone asked me to do some training. Somebody asked me some part-time FP&A work, and 3 different vendors tried to do big collaborations with me in the FP&A space. 2 offered me a potential job. 1 wanted to do a collaboration. I went to my wife, and I'm like, I think I can turn this into a business. She looked at me like I was crazy. We talked about, because I hadn't made any money, and she didn't know I was thinking about a business. I'd been thinking about it a while, but we really hadn't talked about it. And so I got her comfortable. And about 6 weeks later, one day she looks at me, she goes, you want to start your business? I'm comfortable. I go, are you sure? Because this is a partnership, right? Doing a business is a big decision. And she goes, yes, I'm sure. Okay, because I'm going to put in my notice today. I put in my notice that day. And I had no idea where I would be in 3 years and how different the business would be from when I started. But that's basically the journey.
Yeah, no, but that sounds quite interesting, right? So, in the part where you went about it, or you talked to your wife, I think that is very important. People need to understand that switching from basically industry and a secure paid job, with every end of the month you get money in your bank, whether you've done a good job that month or a bad job that month, you get money in the bank. To going into business is a whole different ball game, right? And it's a 2 people partnership. So that sounds very, very interesting as you build your brand around it. But then again, once you started it, what were some of your biggest challenges? As a finance person, if you start a business, what's your biggest challenges you think? Biggest learning curve?
Yeah, it's a great question. So I'd say the hardest thing for me early on, so I was fortunate. So a couple things, I didn't look at it as high risk. And let me explain why. Most people think it's so risky to start a business. I looked at it and said, okay, my business is all around building a brand. A bunch of vendors talk about wanting to hire me. I'm putting myself out there to say, look, I'm someone who wants to talk about FP&A. Started with having an agreement on a podcast where, they would help pay me to run it for them, to be the host. I had savings. I had an 18-month runway. And I looked at it and said, okay, at the end of this, after sharing a bunch, doing training, putting myself out there in FP&A, if I can't get a job, the problem's me, not the market. And I'm going to learn a lot because I'll be really recognizable from all the things I'm doing. And so I said, this allows me to control it. So that's the first thing. I didn't see it as high risk. As far as challenges, the hardest thing for me to adjust to was the idea I could spend a full day working on something and not earn anything. Because I was so used to, you kind of earn money every hour. It's like, oh, crud, I didn't make anything today. Now there's times when I go a week and it's like, okay, I'm fine because I have this big project coming. Now there are other times when I go a week and I'm like, oh crap, I need money. You know what I'm talking about. We've all been there. Or my P&L looks good, but none of the cash is coming into my bank.
Yes.
I went through that a few months ago. And finally with one vendor, I'm like, I need to pay my bills. You need to pay me. And they did in like 2 days. They were really good about it. But I was like, I'm not waiting any longer. I'm tired of robbing Peter to pay Paul type of thing between all these accounts.
No, I get that. I mean, as a business owner, cash is king at the end of the day. Cash in bank is the only, because when I pay my mortgage, I can't pay my mortgage on my face or my brand. I have to pay my mortgage on the money.
They're not going to take an IOU saying, but this vendor will pay me next month. Okay,
No.
but you need to pay us this month.
Yeah, exactly. Okay. So over your years in FP&A, right? You spent what, 12 years plus in FP&A. You've then done basically business for last 4 years. You've done successful three podcasts for last what, 12, 18, 24 months?
Podcast has been when did the May of 2022 is when I started the first one. So 3 years. First episode came out in May. Started recording in March. Done about between the four shows because you had FP&A Today, Tomorrow, Financial Modelers Corner, and Future Finance. I've recorded probably close to 300 episodes now. 275, 300, somewhere in that range.
So over all of that range, right? How have you seen FP&A function evolve, especially around technology? Because again, you've spoken about repeatedly about the vendors that you've been working with. So yes, exactly as you say, right? There are dime a dozen FP&A tools out there, and there is so much technology out there, right? How have you seen much more of implementation, much more of acceptance, much more of people actually using these tools in their day-to-day life?
Yeah, so the first thing, we'll talk FP&A in general, then we'll get into technology. I think the big thing, great FP&A departments haven't changed all that much. The really good companies always realized FP&A was strategic and they needed to be operational and commercial focused. I think the industry is catching up and businesses are catching up to, oh, it's a real benefit to have these people treated as partners. And so I think some of it is becoming much more recognized, but I think great FP&A has always been that. So I'm not sure FP&A that way has changed a lot in what is great FP&A. I think how companies see it has changed a lot, and what's needed and the demands have increased, which is data's increased, which is where that technology comes. I still think most FP&A departments, and I definitely struggle with a lot myself, still struggle with data, right? At the end of the day, data rarely is a data problem. It's almost always a process, leadership, people problem.
Can we have that as a snippet? Honestly, I am tired in the face saying this out loud. So now you have it officially from the FP&A guy. Data problem is not a data problem, it's a process problem.
Yes. And the interview I just released this week, we have a long conversation about that and a lot of advice around data because she does implementations like you. She implements one of the big players out there and does a lot in the FP&A space as a consultant. She's like, it's not a data problem. And that's why you'll always see, I say to people, it's people, process. I'll usually say technology, but if I want to be clever and be PPP, I'll say platform, right? Yeah. Get the right people, make sure you're attracting that talent, you have the right culture, create a process mindset, then technology serves as an enabler. If you have the first two, you can do amazing things with just a spreadsheet. Now, at some point, you're going to want to go beyond a spreadsheet. We all know a spreadsheet is not the best for everything, despite what some people will say on LinkedIn, nor is it dead, and it's not going to die anytime soon.
No, it's not going to die. A calculator is not dead. Calculators still exist, but Excel has replaced a calculator in majority of the stuff. In the same principle, I think Excel will always, even today, even though I implement tools, as you know, the reality is I will still model things out in Excel with my clients. I'll say, okay, is this what you're thinking? Is this the way this should work? Is this the KPI formula? Things like that. And then implement that in a tool set. So no, Excel is not going anywhere. And in fact, there are tools like, I mean, I'm not going to take names, but there are tools out there which work off Excel as well.
Yeah, I could list plenty, right? There's a lot out there that are spreadsheet first platforms, Excel, Google Sheets first, commercial spreadsheets. Then there are the ones that decide to create their own basically multi-dimensional spreadsheet because of the database benefits.
Yeah, and we still work completely fine. I mean, there is nothing wrong with that structure either. But the point is that your people and your processes, and again, I like the way you put it, right? That processes create data. It has been such a hard journey to explain this. And I have to quote my wife on this one. I apologize, she's going to get upset. But she works as a senior finance manager and they're having revenue, income booking, whatever conversation. And so all these departments are booking their income. Somebody has to then correct all those journal entries and then clean the data. And her fight is exactly the same. She's like, why are you correcting? Stop correcting it. Go and tell the people who are booking it, they're booking it wrong. Fix the process. Don't fix the data. The second guy correcting it is correcting the data. That also in an Excel book, not in the source system. He's fixing it in his own Excel. That doesn't help anybody.
100% agree, Tejas. The short term, do whatever you need to be done to clean the data. Long term, always come up with a solution at the source. Now, some companies won't be willing to invest. Sometimes you might need a new platform or whatever, and you might have to kind of limp along. But even then, as much as possible, go to the people and the source, and wherever you can, fix it there.
Yep, absolutely. Cannot agree more. But now that, say, you've seen people implement some amount of platforms, right? And you, I'm sure, have seen a range of platforms. You've assessed a whole lot of them. I've seen your article on, the third generation platforms and things like that. So, having seen all of that, what is the direction you think the industry is taking? Again, I am talking much more from an adoption standpoint of what are the key criteria for maximizing adoption?
Yeah, so I think it's a great question. So I think when you think of the industry, the reality is most companies under 50 million, relatively simple, are still going to use spreadsheets most of the time. Yes, there are tools out there, and there's some good ones, and if you want them, you can use them at the entry, and there's some that help founders, but there's a higher cost, so you have to decide, is it worth it? Most early stage companies want to invest elsewhere, and I totally get that. So I think the smaller the company, the more you're going to continue to see a spreadsheet be used, whether that's Google Sheets, new player that's done well in the small space, equals, source table that just came in, Excel, whatever. You don't need a big complex platform. You need something lightweight. Then you're seeing a ton of effort put into the fractional CFO space. And I think you're going to see a lot of growth there because that's a different animal than being the first FP&A hire. You're supporting 30 different companies. They all have different chart of accounts, and pulling all that manually gets painful. So we're finally seeing a lot. And I think with AI, you're really going to start to see some creative solutions and that becoming a lot easier. So I think in the next couple of years, you'll see a lot of growth of fractional CFO tools. And you'll see very similar to the rest of the market, some that will marry themselves to Excel and some that will say, hey, use my own platform, and everything in between.
Yep.
And then you get into the large space, which I think is really exciting. And we're seeing a lot of AI development. And I think where we're heading are a couple things. We're starting to get close to the first true native AI platforms roll out. And what I mean is sense generative AI, because developing an FP&A platform for large company is a 3 to 5 year journey to be competitive at all. It's not something you build in 6 months. With AI, sure, maybe it's been shortened to 2 years, 18 months, but it's still substantial. And so I think we're now seeing the first native AI, which will do a couple things with using, workflow, AI agents, agentic AI. You'll start to see truly integrated. Oh, supply chain something. Oh, notify FP&A, put a flag in there, or update the model, and much more integrated planning across operations and finance. The second thing I think you're starting to see is someone's really going to figure out a better way to do the data layer. It is so inefficient, and I see you nodding your head, right? Every tool you use, like I was talking to one the other day that they were presenting, and they're like, we have 800 integrations. Like that's one, the different integrations they can connect you to. They're not using those all for one client, but the vendor saying, hey, we have the ability to integrate with 800 different tools. Every vendor's doing something like that. That's very expensive and inefficient. What we need to get to is a middle layer with the data and some kind of agreement around the structure, and then the tools connect to that. So companies have that data that the tool then connects to, kind of like a data warehouse. It's why Power BI is seeing growth, building on top of Power BI or Click. You're seeing a lot of tools in that place because you're one data source. So I think someone's going to figure that out, and that's going to really help accelerate the next generation combined with AI. I think that's some of the things of where we're heading.
I'm going to then put you on spot. Okay, this is not a part of the topics, but like we have recently implemented Fabric for a customer, right? They're really small, they're sub 50 million, in fact, right? So they're really a small customer. But even then, the Fabric is like £6,500 per annum. Respectfully, man, I mean, any business which is more than 20 million or 15 million, 6.5 per annum per year. Bullshit money, man. I mean, respectfully, that's bullshit money.
Less than the salary for your analyst for a month.
In UK, for 6,500, you will not get an
Yeah, like I
analyst.
said, it's less.
It's
It's
not even
less than. It's not
doesn't
even.
even cover minimum wage rate, mate. So the point is, uh, I wanted the way to convince them to get there was, you know what? Businesses really don't own their data. I'm not sure if you were aware of this. Do you know businesses don't own their data? If you have your data in an accounting system like Sage or Oracle or Navision or QuickBooks or whatever you have it in, the minute you change your ERP, they will make your life impossible to get access to your historical data. They literally make it a nightmare. Okay, and I have had that challenge for six of my customers, essentially in last 2 years. Right, nightmare. Whereas if you put that data layer like a Fabric or a Azure or AWS or SQL or Databricks, I respectfully don't care. But
Yeah,
whatever it
whatever
is,
technology you
whatever
use.
technology, you now have your data on a platform you own access to. Your BI, your PM, all your FP&A platforms can suck up data from there. And the more the companies start doing this, the EPM softwares will not have to have 800 connections, exactly as you said, which means actually the cost will become more efficient to actually implement those platforms, I think.
Yeah, and they can focus on the modeling, the workflow, the collaboration, the AI, building out other things instead of every time a client comes along that needs a new integration, we spend 3 weeks building a custom integration.
Exactly.
Not efficient.
Absolutely, right? It's a complete waste of time and it's resources. And you still don't own your data. So tomorrow, if you change your system, your data is gone. You basically sorry, but screwed, man. What the
Yeah.
hell?
Well, speaking of owning your data, so have you ever worked in the automotive industry?
No.
Okay. So the automotive industry, kind of think of their ERP as the DMS. It's a dealer management system, managing all their permit. It's their bread and butter platform. They still have CRMs and all the other stuff. How it works is I had to deal with it. All our products were ancillary. So we needed the DMS data for everything we did. You pay an integration monthly fee for every different tool you connect it to. So there are cases you're paying $1,500 a month for your data just to connect it to the different platforms. There were a bunch of lawsuits around it saying it was monopolistic. And I mean, there are times when it was like $600 to get your data for the month.
Those because that effort, it takes effort to build that plug, right? That bridge that they're building for you, it takes effort.
Sure, but 600 a month, come on, there's 95% profit margin on that. I want a business like that. Yes, there's effort. And I have no problem with the one-time fee or a small monthly fee. Like some of the new players came in, they said, "Oh, hey, no matter what it is, we're going to charge you 50 a month. 50 or 500. Which you going to pick?"
Yeah, no, that is it, right? So that is the reason why I am encouraging more and more businesses, more and more FP&A leaders to be aware of this. That first start to own your data before trying to go fancy. Get the ownership of your data
So
sorted
that could
out.
be our second tagline for this. We could do a short on that. Own your data.
I agree. Own your data. That can be a tagline. So you mentioned, you also talk about storytelling a lot when you talk about this, and you talked about business partnering earlier in the podcast as well. That people are now beginning to see using FP&A people as a partner is more important. So, how does one learn to do better storytelling? Now, clearly, I mean, you come across at least as an extrovert. I am definitely a certified extrovert. I can talk to anybody on the road. So, but a lot of people within finance not inherently extroverted people. In fact, there was a survey somewhere which said that 60 to 80% of finance people tend to be more introverted. So how do they go from that to becoming a good storyteller in a board environment or a decision-making environment?
It's a great question. My training partner, Ron Montero, fabulous. I think you've talked to him before. He shares his story, and he's one of the best presenters I know. He's an introvert, right? He gets done, he has to go home and relax for a couple hours to get his energy back. I do a 4 hour training, and then I'm doing a podcast afterwards because, yeah, I'm excited and still able to go. But In ninth grade, he jokes about the first presentation he ever gave was like the worst presentation in history. And then he tells the story where, he one of the biggest things he was tasked in his plan was in every meeting, you have to at least comment once because he'd never say anything. So he started doing that. Then he got put on a project where he had to present. And then he started putting himself out of his comfort zone and presented in front of 1,200 people in Toronto. So it's a journey is the first thing I'd say. Don't beat yourself up if you're like, I can't present. What you need to do is first change your mindset. I'm not a good presenter yet, or I can't present yet. That reframes it. Then figure out your action plan. So many people say practice, and practice is great, but if you really want to become good, it's deliberate practice with feedback. Prime example of great, simple way to do feedback. PowerPoint has a coach in it. You can rehearse your presentation. It will tell you how many times you're using filler words, what your pace is, how long you spent on each slide, and give you a dashboard of feedback. Start with something as simple as that. And then there's the other side, the fear side. Breathing. Asking yourself why you're afraid. Learning to put yourself in a position where you're more comfortable. Not that it's going to go away, but that you can overcome it. So I think there's a couple different areas in that, but it really boils down to having a plan, practicing, and figuring out how you're going to address both just the sheer practice of presenting a lot and the physiological challenges that we often face, the sweating, the nervousness, the fidgeting, the, doing this, whatever it might be.
Yeah, no, but it's surprising. That frankly, even I didn't know that PowerPoint had a coach. I guess I've always been comfortable in presenting, so I've never had a chance to discover something like that. But I should discover that after this call as well. PowerPoint coach to see if I can improve my timing on a presentation, and if I use too many filler words, then a lot and things like that, and figure it out as you go along.
And we all have those certain words. People will point it out to me, like so, or whatever it might be. That, oh wow, I really do use that word a lot.
Yeah, and it's always good to get feedback, right? And if you get structured feedback from a system, I think it's more neutral. Where as opposed to when you get from a person, you're thinking of their hidden agenda behind it. Whereas PowerPoint has no hidden agenda behind it. It's just telling you as is, which is
Yeah.
which is
Yep. The way I think about it is, practice makes progress. Structured or deliberate practice makes more progress, makes substantial progress. I don't want to say perfect because none of us are ever going to hit perfect, but it makes a material difference.
Yeah, no, but if I was to use slightly different, right? So structured and structured basically practice essentially helps go walk towards success. It may never be perfect, but at least takes you towards small successes as you go along. So you feel more motivated to do more of it, which is fair. Another key theme I wanted to talk to you about, and I am basically more and more talking about this on LinkedIn and stuff like that, is about FP&A infrastructure, right? So people talk about building FP&A departments, and yes, people are critical to obviously a good FP&A department. Also, the in my world, giving good people a good infrastructure to work with uh, makes them enhance their ability and actually gets you 1,000% output from them rather than even 100% output from them, just because they are working, less manual, more business partnering, less time behind a laptop, more time behind in front of people and things like that. Because ultimately, we all know, right? Talking to people and working in the business helps you make better impact. Modeling best of Excel models will not drive decision making unless you take that model to the business and drive decision making from that model. Otherwise, that model is brilliant, but only you know about it. Nobody else does. That's anything.
You know, it's so important to have good technology, right? We've all been in roles. I've been in them. And I had one where one of the biggest reasons I wanted to leave is just everything was a mess. Everything was a challenge. I spent a ton of time cleaning data. And what I found, and generally what you'll find in those companies, if you have a huge data problem and a huge system problem, you probably have a leadership and a people problem. Rarely do you have a toxic culture, great data. Often they go together. Great culture, you're more likely to have good data and good processes. Not always true. So I think first, you got to fix any of that. But, employees today won't accept, especially new people coming up that have grown up in technology in their hands from basically, the time they came out of the womb, so to speak. They're not going to accept copying and pasting all day. You need good processes. If you want to attract the best talent, you want good technology and be able to challenge them and allow them to partner and feel like they're making a difference. Doesn't mean they're not going to still have to clean data and do manual things. And you're going to want them to have technical skills. But the more you can help them be efficient and help them focus on what they're passionate about, the more likely you are to keep them and for them to do good work. And so, a good platform, whatever that may look like I said, depending on your stage, it could be Excel or it could be a $20 billion infrastructure, depending on your company.
Yeah, no, exactly. Right. So because FP&A infrastructure, I think one of my clients put it very correctly to me. Where he was like, he called me within a week, like, I need you this week and I need to talk to you in office. And I went in and he's like, this is my team. They have been working consistently 11 o'clock in the night, 1 o'clock in the night, trying to jostle these Excel boards. If I don't fix this, they are going to leave. Okay. And I want to show intent in front of them and genuinely that we will fix this. Otherwise, they are going to leave, and I am not going to be able to run this department, basically.
Yeah, I'll be leaving too if they all leave, basically.
Right. And essentially, right, for me, that was so eye-opening to see that people are actually realizing that you will lose your team if you don't sort this stuff out.
And that's a sign of a great leader, being willing to do that, to actually bring someone in right on the spot with everybody and basically say, if I don't fix things, they're all out of here.
Yeah. And people who don't will lose good quality people. Yeah. People who are desperate for a job will still hang around. But respectfully, I'm not too sure if they are bringing the best to the business either. So if you really want innovative people, forward thinking people, then you need to give them good infrastructure is what.
There's a reason why generally, if you look at like what the top 10 companies are globally, they usually are considered to have some of the top talent as well and so well respected because they focus on challenging people. They may have areas where, they overwork people or some toxic elements to it, but generally they're known for challenging people. And in order to challenge people, you generally have to have good, efficient processes. Some people may love cleaning up data, may enjoy that challenge, but most of your team, that's not what they're going to love to do all the time.
No, I completely agree. As a voice of FP&A, and I'm assuming Paul will agree with me, FP&A doesn't want to sit and clean data. FP&A wants to go and do business partnering and wants to work with the business. No FP&A person I have met so far has said, "Oh, I love cleaning data in Excel. I don't want to do anything else in their life."
Yeah, I haven't heard anyone say the reason I went into FP&A is so I could clean spreadsheets.
Yeah.
If you did, I want to talk to you on my podcast. We can do a joint episode together.
I want to be that person as well and check their mental sanity. What's wrong with them? Yeah, it's funny. It's funny. So basically, as you host FP&A Today, FP&A Modelers Corner, and things like that, and you also host altogether 4 podcasts, you said.
So I host 3 today. I've done 4 altogether. Today is FP&A Tomorrow, Financial Modelers Corner, Future Finance.
Yeah, Future of Finance. So around that, right, how has that contributed to your own learning? Because come on, 300 conversations. I'm sure you've had some really, really interesting conversations, right? So any you'd like to share with us today, which even you went in the podcast and what made you, react like that in a podcast?
There's definitely been moments where you get some interesting responses. I had one person so nervous that they asked me after each question if it was a good answer. And I was we did a lot of editing. I won't say names, obviously, but that was really interesting. And he did a good job, but she, you get some fascinating stories about, the challenges people deal with. I think the memories that stick out to me the most are the leadership tips and the different things people tell, or how they're great presenters. Like I've had Carl Seidman on, and he's fabulous at presenting. I love listening to him talk. Or probably one of the funnest. I don't know if anyone knows who Oz de Soleil is, and John Ancampora. They're Excel MVPs, Microsoft MVPs. And so I interviewed them in Tucson, Arizona for the Microsoft Excel World Championship. They were the announcers, so they were announcing the event. And I interviewed them beforehand. And we got talking about Power Query. And Oz started talking about how Power Query was like this amazing thing. And I told him someone on my show once said, when mentioning Power Query was their favorite feature in Excel. And when they learned about it, angels came down and puppies and all these things. And I said that to Oz, and Oz goes, yeah. It's like, Power Query is my Jesus or something. And John Ancampora responds with, I guess since we're sharing it that way, I guess Ken Pulse is my Jesus when it comes to Power Query, because he's the guy that introduced him to it. And I did a whole little clip about it. We had angels, and it was just 1 minute video clip. And it was just hilarious to, watch them share how they learned about something and the way they thought about it. So that was a fun moment. There's a lot of different areas and ways. One that I always enjoy is I ask people on Financial Modelers Corner, tell me about the worst financial model you've ever built, seen, or worked with. And I can see you nodding. I'm sure you're thinking of some horror stories in your head, right? I already see I have plenty. And one guy told me he had one where it had a workbook, a linked workbook. They opened that workbook up and found it had been linked to another workbook. Opened that one up, it had been linked to another. By the time they got all the way back to the first workbook that had no links, guess how many workbooks?
200.
47.
Oh, I beat him then. I have been in a business where they had 500 interconnected Excel books.
Yes, but did each of them link back?
Not in a linear fashion. It's a web.
I'm talking just linear. They had hundreds in total, but I'm talking you would have had to gone back 47 levels just to refresh.
Did somebody not decide to cut the cord? It's like you gave birth to a child, but you forget the umbilical cord. Cut the cord, man.
I don't know what they were thinking. I don't know what to tell you. That's the worst one I've had.
No, my 500 is basically each department has got 50 or 60 of them, and then all of them combined together. And therefore, when I was presenting to the GM of the head of GM of the supply chain, of a very respected business in the UK, okay, and I'm presenting the numbers in Excel, and numbers are changing. This was my 6th week in the business. I'm like, these numbers are changing, Steve. I have no idea how they're changing. He's like, Tejas, it's not the first time this is happening. This happens all the time. I'm not surprised. I'm like, I am shocked. And I can tell you will never happen again till I am here. Categorically. And we did 2 forecast cycles after that. Never happened ever again. I'm like, this is madness. How the hell does this work, man? 500 Excel books? What the hell?
500 is crazy. Yeah, those type of things are just crazy where you just shake your head. So those are some fun ones I get from people. Oh, the other one you'll find interesting. Do one more. What's the most unique thing you've ever built in Excel for like your personal life? So a couple that have been really fascinating. Someone built one to count how many times a show used swear words because they were so popular. They were so common in the show. They didn't want to count them themselves. So they did an API to the show and had Excel track how many swear words they were using. So that was a fascinating one. Another person used it to keep track. They were trying to get tickets to a concert, and they built an API to the website, and it would track how long they had left based on where they were in the queue. So they knew when they needed to be at their computer and how long they had to wait. Someone did a wedding planner, which no surprise on a wedding planner, but they had a column for emotional value of the guest attending. They ranked it. Their spouse ranked it. I was like, what do you do if you rank their parents a 1 and they rank their parents a 10? And a few weeks later, they admitted they gave up that part of it. Like, not going to work. So all kinds of interesting stories.
I did once. I don't know if any Asians are watching on the show, but it is in the Asian household, it's very common. 5 o'clock is a conversation of what do you want to have for dinner tonight? And I got so fed up with that question one day. I was like, you know what? In an Excel book, put 30 items, take this, make anything, don't ask me. The wife printed it off, put it on the fridge, and for next 6 months made everything else but those items. That was my punishment. She like, I will not make the stuff you like. I'll make everything else but the stuff you like. I'm like, what the hell? That's one way to get back at
Oh,
me.
that's funny.
It deserves me, I guess.
You kind of had that one coming.
I did. I really did. It was fun though. We still think about it very fondly. So yeah, it's fun.
I'm sure there were a few days at the time you're like, really, come on, make me that. But you look back at it and just laugh now.
Yeah. Now we are okay. 18 years still married, even after that incident. So there you go.
Good deal. You made it past the 6-month nightmare.
Yes, exactly. What trends are you observing in the FP&A software space, right? So are you observing much more Excel-based stuff? Are you observing a lot more self-platform stuff, things like that? What do you think businesses are preferring more, and what do you think developers are working towards more?
I think it really depends on the size. When you get into enterprise, they want very structured data, and that's hard to do if it's 100% an Excel interface. So I think the larger the customer, the more calculations they need, the much more you tend to see a web app with a multi-dimensional spreadsheet and the ability to load some stuff and use a commercial spreadsheet as the interface, whether that's Google or Excel for certain aspects. Think of TM1. I think they're the prime example. A lot have been like them of, hey, they work really well with Excel, but they are not Excel versus other tools that really are Excel. Like if Excel went away, they'd be hard to survive tomorrow. And so I think size depends. I think the larger, and I'm going to guess you agree, I think an area we're seeing a lot of growth, and I think we'll continue to see it, is in the Power BI. Also Fabric. There's one of the vendors out there that they don't even need Power BI anymore. They'll give your FP&A school just using Fabric.
Oh,
They have
wow.
their own business intelligence tools. They can work with Power BI, but they've also built their own infrastructure where they can turn off the Power BI and you can do it all just off Fabric and do your planning.
Oh, lovely. Not heard of them. I'll probably get a name after the show.
Yeah. We can talk once we wrap up.
So for a finance team looking to adopt a new FP&A tool, what are the key factors that you think they should look at for a successful FP&A implementation, right? Because you get all these horror stories. I have been involved in recovery of 3 horror stories myself, where the implementation has they spent literally hundreds of thousands of pounds. It's blown up in their face, and then they've called me and said, "Tejas, can you help us rescue this?" People have got Power BI implementations wrong. Sorry for the French. How the dash do you get Power BI implementation wrong? But apparently, people have got Power BI implementation wrong. So, what are the success factors to consider, you reckon, for a successful tool implementation?
As long as you're selecting a tool that can meet your business's needs, right? You're not selecting a tool that's designed for a company under 10 million for your billion-dollar company. 90% of the time, if things don't work, it has to do with your implementation. So first they're selecting the tool. And I've done this survey 4 times where I've asked people, what's the biggest barrier to adopting FP&A? The number one answer in all 4, the other answers have all varied, but number one every time has been lack of awareness of what's out there. People are overwhelmed by the market. So first, often you need a little help to narrow it down to what makes sense based on your needs and your technology and your industry and you wanting to be in Excel or wanting an Excel replacement or needing consolidation. You can give them a list of probably 5 to 10 right off the bat. I'm guessing if you went to a company, they gave you, they answered 15 questions for them, you could give them a short list, right?
I literally have 15 questions which I sent them and they answered it at all the time.
Yeah, I think I have like 20 or 25. It's very similar, right? And from there, it's being comfortable with your implementation partner. If they propose a partner you're not comfortable with, tell them to give you a different partner or go elsewhere. If you're not comfortable with the implementation partner, even if you love the software, don't do it. That would be my first piece of advice. The second is try to clean up the data as much as you can ahead of time versus paying them and letting them lead your data, because no consultant, no matter how good they are, is going to know your data as well as you know your data. And then be involved in the process. Be willing to push back. If they say, hey, we'll fix this later, we're doing this big, huge, long workaround, and you're like, that's more painful than what I was doing before, don't just say, okay. Say, no, that's not acceptable. Let's discuss alternatives. So I think it's your responsibility to be involved, make sure it's done in phases, and you thoroughly test each phase versus trying to do everything at once. So I think if you do a good job of the RFP process, defining your requirements, and you're involved, you have a much higher chance of success. That doesn't mean it still some will fail. There's always going to be some. You're trying to limit risk. Just like when you start a business, businesses fail. People make mistakes. The whole idea is, what are the things I can do to limit risk to increase my chances of success? And then on the business side, communicate.
Yes, I think so. I mean, getting people involved early is one of the things I have learned as an implementation partner. Basically, go and sit with that person and say, you know what, hell with what I can do, what the software can do, hell with all of us. Tell me how you're doing this today. So we automated something for one of the big, basically clients we had. Funny enough, they have a data warehouse. Somebody takes data from the data warehouse into Excel, cleans it, ties it to the ledger, and then basically makes a CSV out of it, okay, to go into other platforms. So this poor guy's job is to take data warehouse data and put into different systems via CSV, but have to make it sure it ties to the basically the ledger, the accounting group ledger. I'm like, don't ask me what my solution can do. Don't ask me what I can do. Help with me, help. Show me what you're doing. You get this download from the data warehouse. Now what? Okay. And then he walked through that with us for 2 hour recording we have of that one. We went through every step, blah, blah, blah. But okay, now I understand what you're doing. Replicated and automated the entire damn thing. Showed him the system takes less than 30 seconds to do for what he would spend 3 to 4 days to do. Okay, one man doing 4 days, only this. And we showed him every step of the way. This is your step one. Look, this is happening correctly. Look, this is happening correctly. 2 months did a parallel run around. He was blown off his socks. He said, "Oh my God, this is in 30 seconds." I'm like, yes. So we can do repeated runs. So even during the month end, if you change your numbers, if the group ledger numbers change, it doesn't take me 2 hours to do this. Press a button, 30 seconds, I'm done. Let's move on. That's the magic. That is necessary, I
And
think.
that's the type of implementation partner you want, that will really invest time to understand your business and your processes and partner with you to make them more efficient, versus just try to throw their standard implementation at you. And some do that. You know exactly what I'm talking about.
I know some of the partners as well, so I won't go there. But yeah, it's not out of a box, right? When you did FP&A jobs, right? You can't take this. Yes, there is learning from your last job. You bring to this job, but there is challenges in this job which is different to your last job, and you have to pick up those challenges and work with those challenges. The same in implementation as well.
You have to customize. Yes, you can rinse and repeat to a certain extent, but these are bespoke tools. There's a reason why implementation is not the press of a button.
Exactly. Exactly. And again, I get customers who do that as well, who come and tell me, but why can't you do implementation in 2 weeks or 4 weeks? I can't. Unless you want me to do a piss poor job, I can't. And I don't want to do a piss poor job. I refuse to put my name against that job, so I won't do it.
I
I can't
can, but
do
you'll
it.
hate me and hire someone else afterwards for twice the cost. So let me know.
Yeah,
Like,
literally. And I am telling you, I've had people who've done that and then have come back to me and have paid me as well. And I'm like, your last invoice, that business, you paid X 100K. I'm not going to go into real number. It's eye-watering money. It's like somebody's bloody mortgage. You paid that mortgage for a failed implementation, and now you're going to pay me again. I mean, are you crazy? But it's just hard. It's really hard. Anyway, I'm wary of your time and time. We are running the last few minutes, and I have my three standard questions. Let's go through the three standard questions, right? Where do you think the future of FP&A in 3 to 5 years is? You're not allowed to say only AI, right? I mean, AI, we all know AI is coming, and that's fine. But like, what do you think really the future of FP&A next 3 to 5 years is?
I think it's going to continue to become more and more a strategic, commercial, almost consulting type role. Finance is where we sit because we're capital of the steward, but it's all about operations and being big business focused. AI will help automate things. AI will change the way we work. AI will make us efficient. It will do away with some jobs. It will create some jobs. Let's be honest. There are people who lose their job because of AI, even if you're using it. But that doesn't mean everybody will. And so I think that's kind of where we're heading. And I think we're going to see more and more people from FP&A. We've already seen it. We'll continue going into the CFO role, more CFOs becoming CEOs. Salesforce just created a role. They're one of the first large company I know of that's done this. A lot of small companies do it. They combine their chief operating officer and their chief finance officer into a COFO. It's chief operating finance officer. And so I think you'll see a little bit more of that, a continued blurring of finance and operations, because to be great at FP&A, you have to understand all.
What is the one thing FP&A functions need help with today to become more better at strategic finance business partnering?
So I'm going to say in two. The number one thing they need to do themselves is own their time. Figure out how to truly own your time. I was bad at this, but I've realized more and more as I've interviewed people, do my own business. There's generally time to do a lot more than you're doing if you truly protect your calendar and your time and don't get caught up in the squeaky wheel syndrome. Now, I think the number one thing FP&A needs as far as help is they need help in dealing with data and understanding it, cleaning it, structuring it, getting to the point where they can comfortably analyze and present on it without a ton of work.
Yeah. So basically, they need help with a good data infrastructure for them to be able to spend more time on business partnering. Perfect. For someone who's looking to move into FP&A or has just started in FP&A, I know even recently one of your posts talked about all these certifications in FP&A and finance. So funny enough, there you go. So what is the one skill and one certification you would recommend to them for somebody who's looking to do commercial business finance, not valuation and all of that stuff, textbook commercial business finance?
So I'm not going to list the technical skills. Those are table stakes. We know what they are: modeling, Excel, etc. The number so hard to list just one. I'm going to cheat and list two. One is empathy. Put yourself in your business's shoes and focus on them. Really having empathy. The second, and I heard this the other day, first time I'd ever heard it from a guest, and I'm stealing it: humble curiosity. Not enough to just be curious, being humble and be curious because you're really wanting to understand, not respond. I think if you do those two things, you're truly curious and always asking why and trying to learn, you have empathy for the business, you'll become a great business partner. You'll figure out the storytelling, the influencing, all the other things, and you'll make a difference.
Cool. And what about certifications?
So I think there's a lot of great ones. I don't think there's one. So I'm going to run through the top and say what I think they make sense for. The FPAC from AFP, if you want a credential and continuing education and be part of one of the best organizations in the world, and have something similar to a CPA where you've taken a rigorous test where they spend hundreds of thousands of dollars to be certified, it's a great program. I did it. Highly recommend it. Now, Wharton and Wall Street Prep has a great program. Theirs is a certificate. You take a training. If you score a certain level, you pass. There's not necessarily a continuing education component. What they provide is very good training, but really they provide a great name, right? Everybody recognizes Wharton, and great networking opportunities. Next, if you're looking for great value and you want live training, best one out there is Certified Global FP&A Professionals. Very reasonable price. It's run by someone out of India and the Middle East, and they do the training on Saturdays. 6-month program. Fabulous.
Sorry, is that Asif and
yes,
Dhawan?
FP&A Professionals Institute.
Okay, I know them.
I figured you did. Asif and
I work with them. They're from Bombay, man. I cannot not work with them. I'm from Bombay as well.
Yeah, exactly. So I think they do something really good there. If you want a ton of course options, you want all digital, all self-study, really strong on the financial modeling, highly respected. CFI has their financial modeling valuation analyst, their FP&A specialization. If your goal is financial modeling, you want to demonstrate to your employer you're good at financial modeling and improve your modeling skills, the number one I recommend, and I often tell people to learn to do this early, is the AFM from FMI. So to me, it's not one certificate. I think there's different ones that fit different people, and you can learn something from all of them, and there's nothing wrong if you decide to do multiple. I've done FMI. I've done the FPAC. I provided material for Wharton. I'm building courses right now for CFI. With Asif, they use some of my podcasts. I'm listed as one of their instructors.
No, perfect. I mean, I know them. I'm trying to come on an arrangement with them because I think what they are building in India is quite dramatic. I've worked in India for a couple of years in 2006, 2008, and FP&A was non-existent in the market at the time. And today, now imagine they're running a FP&A institute in India, right? I mean,
Yeah, I think it's fabulous what they're doing, and they're in the right market. There's a lot of room for growth. Smart guys. There's someone to watch for sure.
yeah, definitely, definitely. Cool. I mean, any closing thoughts? How was your experience today?
Any closing thoughts? Listen to this podcast and enjoy life. There you go. There's my closing.
No, thank you so much, Paul. Thanks a lot. It was wonderful having you here. Keep listening to FP&A Unboxed to listen to people like Paul give you advice on FP&A of the future, my friends. Thank you so much.
Thank you, Tejas. I really enjoyed it.